A complete breakdown in relations. Moscow is directly threatening Washington, which prompted Putin to openly blackmail the American president, and why Trump ordered the immediate deployment of the army. North Korea declares war. Who will the dictator fight, and is there a threat of nuclear weapons? These and other key events from Sunday evening, October 5th. The most important and breaking news. Watch the exclusive details. Next, a news release. Up-to-date information on events in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and the world. Earlier and clearer than others. Everything you need to know today. Several residential buildings were destroyed in Lviv. Civilians were killed and wounded throughout the country. Massive Russian shelling last night was directed primarily at the western regions of the country. Mortars demonstratively flew over Kyiv and the surrounding region. Russia unleashed one of the most powerful combined attacks of the war, simultaneously employing drones, kamikazes, daggers, calibers, and strategic aviation. Lviv, Odessa, Vinnytsia, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Zaporizhia oblasts came under fire. Lviv became the epicenter of the attack. The city was bombed in waves, first by shaheeds, then by daggers and calibers. Large fires broke out in several districts of Lviv. The Sparo Industrial Park is burning. The streets are shrouded in smoke. The city is partially without power. Public transportation is suspended. Zaporizhia experienced a series of drone and aerial bomb strikes. 1 person was killed and 10 were wounded. Homes, schools, and power grids were damaged. Tens of thousands of people were left without power. In the Kirovorad, Cherkasy, and Ivano-Frankivsk oblasts, air defense forces shot down dozens of drones, but the debris caused destruction to residential buildings and power lines. The Ukrainian Ministry of Energy warned that the strikes pose a growing risk of disruptions across the country's entire power grid. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Russia is again playing nuclear blackmail, attempting to plunge Ukraine into darkness. This is the second wave of massive attacks in a week, and judging by the scale, Moscow is once again testing the resilience of Ukraine's energy sector before winter. The Baltic is boiling. Danish intelligence has accused the Russian Navy of a series of provocations that nearly resulted in clashes in the straits between the North and Baltic Seas. According to Danish military intelligence, Russian warships have repeatedly aimed weapons at Danish aircraft and vessels, jammed navigation signals, and performed dangerous maneuvers near the country's territorial waters. The agency's director, speaking at a special briefing, stated that Copenhagen has evidence of Moscow's deliberate actions. One of the Russian ships, he said, has been anchored in Danish waters for over a week, demonstratively not leaving them. Intelligence believes this is a signal that the Kremlin is prepared for escalation, especially if Daniel attempts to restrict the movement of the shadow fleet transporting sanctioned oil. We have recorded several instances in the Danish Straits where Russian warships have targeted our helicopters and vessels, as well as used tracking systems. Meanwhile, joint wings of defense exercises have begun in the country, where Ukrainian and Danish military personnel are practicing repelling drone strikes in case the Kremlin's hybrid war escalates to a new level.
जब आप 3 पट्टी पॉकेट करके एक दरवाजा खोलते हो तो कई दरवाजे अपने आप खुल जाते हैं जिसके उस पार
Kremlin's hybrid war escalates to a new level. The center of the Georgian capital has become a war zone. Barricades are burning, the streets are shrouded in smoke, and protesters are not dispersing even at night. Violent clashes with police, who used water cannons and tear gas, continued on Rustaveli Avenue and Arbeliani Square. The crowd broke loose, and an assault on the presidential palace began. Protesters threw stones, and barricades caught fire. The night in Tbilisi descended into chaos. A protest that began as a political rally devolved into street violence, the likes of which the country hasn't seen since the Russo-Georgian Revolution. The Georgian Prime Minister accused the European Union ambassador of supporting an attempt to overthrow the constitutional order and held him responsible for the unrest. According to the latest reports, 21 police officers were injured, one of them in serious condition. Criminal cases have been opened, including under the article on coup d'état. The number of detainees has not yet been disclosed. Apparently, they expected more people to come to the city center than actually showed up. When they saw that it was already 8 p.m. and Freedom Square wasn't even half full, they decided to force the issue and immediately resorted to violence. This was a clear and obvious crime. We warned that any violence on the streets will have consequences. The protest was sparked by the results of the municipal elections, in which the ruling Georgian Dream Party received between 70% and 90% of the vote, with a record low turnout of just 33.5%. Tbilisi Mayor Kaka Kaladze was re-elected for a third term with 71.5%. The opposition claims the elections were rigged and calls the ongoing battle for Georgia's future. Police arrested world-renowned opera singer Pata Berchaladze, a legendary baritone who once performed at the opening ceremony. From the podium, he announced the creation of a national assembly and declared that power in the country was transferring to the people. He called on the Ministry of Internal Affairs not to interfere with the protesters and to detain the leaders of the Georgian Dream Party. He now faces up to 9 years in prison. According to Georgian media, the 70-year-old Berchaladze was detained in a hospital. He is accused of calling for the overthrow of the government and organizing mass unrest. He allegedly incited protesters to storm the presidential palace on the day of the municipal elections. The collapse of Russian-American relations lies in the unburied hatchet. This is roughly how Putin described the possible transfer of Tamagami missiles to Ukraine. The quote is imprecise, but it conveys the essence. I wonder if the Americans are aware that they have such a good relationship with Russia? There were also issues related to, say, discussing problems, deliveries of new weapon systems, including long-range systems, high-precision missiles, and so on. Well, I already said that this will lead to the destruction of our relations, at least not the emerging positive trends. The world is rapidly sliding toward a new Great War. The president of Serbia has openly stated this. Incidentally, not for the first time. When you increase the share of GDP spent on military spending to 5%, and the average is 2.1%, that's a colossal amount of money, says Alexander Vucic. That means it's all over the place.
This means everyone is preparing for conflict. To be completely frank, everyone is preparing for war. The only question is whose side everyone will end up on. We'd like to avoid wars. We'd like to avoid clashes. The
leader of Serbia added that Belgrade wants to avoid being drawn into any confrontations. But, according to him, in the modern world, no one wants to listen to anyone anymore. I hope you're not like that. Share your opinion in the comments below this video. It's mandatory. Overnight, the Lithuanian capital suddenly came to a standstill. Vilnius airport suspended air traffic after mysterious hot air balloons appeared in the sky. The airspace was temporarily closed, and flights were diverted to Riga and other cities. Dozens of flights were cancelled. Sources in emergency services report that the balloons were flying at high altitude and could have been meteorological devices, but their origin has yet to be determined. By morning, according to the airport's press service, operations had resumed and the airspace had reopened, but authorities haven't ruled out the possibility that the incident was a test of air defense systems and civil aviation amid the increasing frequency of provocations in the skies over the Baltic states. Trump ordered the deployment of the military. The U.S. National Guard has deployed to one of the continent's largest cities. After a night of violent protests and clashes with immigration agents, President Donald Trump authorized 300 National Guard troops in Chicago. The White House stated that the troops were deployed to protect federal employees and government buildings. White House Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson stated that Trump, quote, will not turn a blind eye to the lawlessness ravaging American cities. End of quote. The order was issued despite protests from local authorities, who insisted the situation was under control, but the move sparked an immediate political firestorm. Opponents accused Trump of militarizing domestic politics. According to the Department of Security, protesters attacked immigration officials in Chicago. Police responded with tear gas and rubber bullets.